I'm going to read 3 poems. I don't know if you know that story about one of the first open mics. It occurred in the Italian Middle Ages, and it was toward the end of the evening that a young man came up and said, "Good evening, my name is Dante. I'm just going to read 3 poems." But this will be shorter. The first poem is called January in Paris, and the epigraph is from Paul Valéry. Poems are never completed, they are only abandoned. And the poem is actually a repudiation of that comment. January in Paris. That winter, I had nothing to do but tend the kettle in my shuttered room on the top floor of a pension near a cemetery. But I would sometimes descend the stairs, unlock my bicycle, and pedal along the cold city streets, often turning down a wide boulevard down a narrow side street bearing the name of an obscure patriot. I followed a few private rules, never crossing a bridge without stopping mid-point to lean my bike on the railing and observe the flow of the river below as I tried to better understand the French. In my pale coat and my Basque cap, I pedaled past the windows of a patisserie or sat up tall in the seat, arms folded, and clicked downhill, filling my nose with winter air. I would see beggars and street cleaners in their bright uniforms, and sometimes I would see the poems of Valéry, the ones he never finished but abandoned, wandering the streets of the city half-clothed. Most of them needed only a final line or two, a little verbal flourish at the end. But whenever I approached, they would retreat from their makeshift fires into the shadows, thin specters of incompletion. Forsaken for so many decades, how could they ever trust another man with a pen? I came across the one I wanted to tell you about, sitting with a glass of rosé at a cafe table, beautiful, emaciated, unfinished, cruelly abandoned with a flick of panache by Monsieur Paul Valéry himself, big fish in the school of symbolism, and for a time president of the Committee of Arts and Letters of the League of Nations, if you please. Never mind how I got her out of the cafe, past the concierge and up the flights of stairs. Remember that Paris is the capital of public kissing. And never mind the holding and the pressing. It is enough to know that I moved my pen in such a way as to bring her to completion. A simple final stanza, which ended as this poem will, with the image of a gorgeous orphan lying on a rumpled bed, her large eyes closed, a painting of cows in a valley over her head, and off to the side, me in a window seat, blowing smoke from a cigarette at dawn. Thank you. Thanks. Excuse me. This is an older poem. It was in a book called Questions About Angels that the great Ed Hirsch chose for the National Poetry Series and set me reeling into some kind of poetry life. It's called Forgetfulness, and it's just a meditation on forgetting, and it begins by talking about how we forget the things we read. Forgetfulness. The name of the author is the first to go, followed obediently by the title, the plot, the heartbreaking conclusion, the entire novel, which suddenly becomes one you have never read, never even heard of. It is as if, one by one, the memories you used to harbor decided to retire to the southern hemisphere of the brain, to a little fishing village where there are no phones. Long ago, you kissed the names of the 9 muses goodbye, and you watched the quadratic equation pack its bag. And even now, as you memorize the order of the planets, something else is slipping away, a state flower, perhaps, the address of an uncle, the capital of Paraguay. Whatever it is you are struggling to remember, it is not poised on the tip of your tongue, not even lurking in some obscure corner of your spleen. It has floated away down a dark mythological river whose name begins with an L. As far as you can recall. Well, on your own way to oblivion, where you will join those who have forgotten even how to swim and how to ride a bicycle. No wonder you rise in the middle of the night to look up the date of a famous battle in a book on war. No wonder the moon in the window seems to have drifted out of a love poem that you used to know by heart. And finally, thank you. And this poem is based on a photograph by the experimental photographer Harold Edgerton, and it's called Ballistics. When I came across the high-speed photograph of a bullet that had just pierced a book, the pages exploding with the velocity, I forgot all about the marvels of photography and began to wonder which book the photographer had selected for the shot. Many novels sprang to mind, including those of Raymond Chandler, where an extra bullet would hardly be noticed. Nonfiction offered too many choices: a history of Scottish lighthouses, a biography of Joan of Arc, and so forth. Or it could be an anthology of medieval literature, the bullet having just beheaded Sir Gawain and scattered the band of assorted pilgrims. But later, as I was drifting off to sleep, I realized that the executed book was a recent collection of poems written by someone of whom I was not fond, and that the bullet must have passed through his writing with little resistance at 2,800 feet per second, through the poems about his sorry childhood, the ones about the dreary state of the world, and then through the author's photograph, through the beard, the round glasses, and that special poet's hat he loves to wear. Thank you.